All right, let's get into it. I decided to make this video because I've seen people with a lot of confusion surrounding the grandfather sword, how it works, and which offensive stats are prio on our weapons. So obviously I'm a barb. This is season 2, so I've got overpower, berserking, strength, and stats on my weapons. I did start out the season stacking crit damage because I misunderstood how Grandfather works, and I've recently seen a lot of people asking about crit damage and how it compares to some other stats. So, looking at this mace, I've got close damage and crit damage. You'll notice the close damage could roll up to 70.5%. The crit damage can roll up to 63%. So assuming all of your attacks crit and all of your attacks are close, which one is better? Well, obviously the one with the larger bonus is better, the close damage. But it gets a little weird because if we look at the stat sheet, when we have different um, multiplicative bonuses, it starts to be kind of confusing. So um, that's kind of where the confusion comes from. You'll see that critical strike damage for me is at 163.1%. The fact is I only have 52.5% from items in Paragon, and it looks like that's been inflated by things like the inherent 50% bonus, by things like heavy-handed adds 15% to my critical strike damage. I don't have Grandfather, but if I did, this critical strike damage on the stat sheet would be even higher. So it would make it look like if I needed critical strike damage, if I needed some other affix, adding one critical strike damage would increase this on my stat sheet a lot. And so we've been sort of misled, unfortunately, by the stat sheet, but I'll hopefully clear up some of that confusion. Before I do, I want to go back in time and talk about something that barbarians figured out way back in preseason. So the stat sheet has a long history of being confusing and mistrusted because of, mostly, to my knowledge, because of Unbridled Rage. So this ability makes core skills deal 135% times, that's a multiplicative bonus, increased damage. So if I look at my stat sheet, back in preseason, the stats that you wanted to stack were core, close, crit, and vuln. So people would have a lot of core damage. I have no core damage because it's not meta right now, but if I did, you'd see this number be a lot higher. I'm not exactly prepared for this part of the demo, but I should have a weapon somewhere with core that I can actually demo this with. And that'll be helpful later. Alright, this has core damage. Let's just show this. Alright, so core damage 29. If I look at my stat sheet, it was 135 before. Now core damage, where is it? Damage with core 203. So it went up 68%. Right, if I take this off, core damage is 135. If I put it on, it should add 29, but it adds from 135 to 203 is almost 70. It's 68. It's 69.9%. So this might lead you to believe that core damage is much more valuable than the other offensive aspects because it gets multiplied up in the stat sheet by Unbridled Rage. And what this might mean is if I have like 1,000% core skill damage somehow, I would be getting double that, or more than double that out of my, due to the Unbridled Rage key passive, multiplying it all by, 2.35. But that's not actually what happens. We tested it long ago. We determined that the stat sheet is bugged with regards to Unbridled Rage, it's not showing you your actual additive core damage. It's showing you something else because there's some weird calculation going on where your actual additive core damage, which if you hover over, it'll tell you it's 29% for me. The core damage on the stat sheet is not your actual additive core damage, and it's not something that actually enters your damage equation. It's some sort of weird result of who knows what. The Unbridled Rage, it's very easy to test. If you have a character with no core damage, if you have a character with a ton of core damage, you put on Unbridled Rage, you take it off. In either case, it gives you plus 135% damage with core skills. It doesn't matter how much core you've stacked. Those additive core damage affixes do not give you any additional bonus if you run Unbridled Rage, and so there's no synergy between them. So we've actually, the reason I'm talking about that is because we have a similar interaction between other multiplicative damage bonuses and their lines on the stat sheet that we traditionally associate with additive damage. These are not actually additive damage. They are output by some damage calculation function that takes different tags. Anytime you deal damage, there's a set of tags associated with that damage you've dealt, whether it crits, whether it's an overpower, whether the enemy is vulnerable. The damage calculation takes all those tags into account, adds up all of your applicable additive damage, multiplies together all your applicable multiplicative damage, and then multiplies those together, all the multiplicative damage plus your additive damage bucket, and that's how your damage is scaled. There's other things involved, your weapon DPS, your strength if you're using a skill and it applies, that kind of thing. So I actually have a spreadsheet we're going to jump over to now where I'm going to demonstrate some of this. But before I do, let's memorize a couple numbers if you can, or correct me if I'm wrong, because these are going to matter. So I have Blood Rage. The tooltip tells me it gives me a bonus of 72%, and this is to all damage. I have Tears of Blood. This gives me a bonus of 96.2% to all damage. So we've got 72, 96.2, and we'll look at my all damage. Okay, it's 310.8. I have 21.8 from Paragon. This is another line that's really weird. Tears of Blood and Blood Rage, they're tagged with the all damage tag, so they apply to all damage. And when you go to the stat sheet and look at all damage, those get multiplied in. But they don't actually multiply your all damage additive affixes. I have only 21.8. I've many times tried to figure out where that's from, and I can't find it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so core skill damage has weird interactions with Unbridled Rage in the stat sheet. All damage has weird interactions with Blood Rage and Tears of Blood in the stat sheet. And critical strike damage has weird interactions with the inherent 50% multiplicative bonus, the Grandfather, and the skill Heavy-Handed. So I'm going to explain all of those right now, but the conclusion, the TLDR, is that if you have the choice between a few different affixes as your fifth prio, like, for example, crit, close, core, although it looks like in the stat sheet that crit and core may be multiplied up by Unbridled Rage or the Grandfather, that's not actually what happens. In practice, if you test it, you will find that all of your additive bucket gets multiplied by Grandfather and Unbridled Rage. So you want that bucket to be as big as possible, And since close has a bigger max roll value than crit and core, close is better. And that's assuming everything you do is core, everything you do is close, everything you do is crit. Close is easily fifth prio after strength, stats, overpower, and berserking. So let's look at the math. Okay, so up top I've got a box with multiplicative damage bonuses. I've put my value for Blood Rage here. The tooltip told me 72, but I reverse engineered. It's actually 71.9, and you'll see why. Tears of Blood in my tooltip said 96.2. That's accurate. I've got Unbridled Rage. I've got Heavy-Handed, 15% bonus. I do not have Grandfather, so I'm actually going to delete this for now. And I've got the base crit bonus. I should say crit here. Base crit. Alright, so here I've got all damage. I've taken the 71.9, turned it into a multiplier, I'll call it. It's not represented as a percentage, it's represented as a multiplier. The same here, the 96.2, I've turned it into a multiplier 1.96. And all of those multiplicative percentage numbers I've turned into multipliers. So for each of these different damage types, these damage tags, all damage, crit, core, close, I've multiplied. I've gotten the product of all the multipliers. So all damage has a really large product. It's 1.72 times 1.96. The crit damage multiplier's product is 1.725. It would be a lot more if I had Grandfather, obviously. Core, just this one bonus, 2.35 from Unbridled Rage. Close has no multiplicative damage bonuses associated with it, for barbs anyway. And then if you have some damage that is crit and core and close, and it's also going to have the all damage tag, then we would multiply together all four of those, all of the multipliers for all four damage types, and we'd have a total, or a product, I should say, of 13.67. All right, let's look at the additive damage bonuses. So if I mouse over all damage in my stat sheet, it tells me 21.8% from items in Paragon, so I put that here, 21.8. Crit, same thing. If you hover over damage, critical, 52.5% from items in Paragon. That's my sword's implicit bonus, 52.5. I don't have any additive core or close. If I add up all the additive damage bonuses from these four different tags, I've got 74.3. That's just all plus crit. If I turn the percentage representation into a multiplier, decimal number, it's just the percentage plus 1. All right, 1.218 in this case, 1.525 in this case. And then if you add those, to get the total additive bucket, you add up the percents and then add 1 to that. So 21.8 plus 52.5, 74.3, add those together is 74.3, yeah. Add 1, 1.743, okay. So to get your total damage from the multipliers times the additive bucket, you just multiply the product of the multipliers times the sum of the additive bonuses plus 1. So A times M, this is A, this is M, and we get 4.108 for all damage, 2.631 for crit, 2.35 for core. Again, this is, in this case, it's just the Unbridled Rage multiplier. There's no additive core. And for close, I have no multipliers. I have no additive damage. The close total damage bonus for just the close tag is just 1.0. And for all 4 tags, it's 23.83. Okay, so how do we get what is shown in the stat sheet? It's really simple. We just take the total, the T value here. Should bold these for funsies. We just turn it back into a percent and subtract 100%. So all damage is going to be basically the product of Blood Rage and Tears of Blood and my small 21.8 as a multiplier. The product of 3.37 and 1.21 is 4.108. Turn that into a percent, subtract 100, and you've got 3.108. So let's check my stat sheet. All damage, 3.108. There it is. All right. And this is how I knew that the Blood Rage in the tooltip says 72, but it's actually 71.9, because if I put 72 here, this all damage total is off just a little bit. So the tooltip in my Paragon is only giving me 2 significant figures, but if we want to get this accurate to 4 significant figures, we know the Blood Rage bonus is actually 71.9. For crit, I've got heavy-handed, I've got the base crit, multiply those together, it's 1.7. I've got the sword implicit bonus, 52.5. Total of those multiplied together is 2.63, and if you turn it into a percent and subtract 100, it's 1.631, and my crit damage is 1.631. For core, this one's easy. It's just 135 because I have no additive, so it's really simple. Damage with core, 135. Right, and close is going to be 0 because I have no multiplicative or additive close. It's not even going to be in the list because they don't display things that are 0. Wait, here it is, 9%. Damage versus close. 0 from items in Paragon. What the hell? How do I have... Is this, isn't it? Pit Fighter, 9%. Oh, nice. I could put that in my... Ooh, fun. We're doing this live now. Multiplicative. Let's just add let's put Pit Fighter here. And then test my theory in real time. Alright. This goes here. Sorry the bars are all messed up now, but, you know. What can you do? This is supposed to be the product. Oh, right. Extend your range. One more. There you go. Okay. Cool. There's the 9% that we saw. Okay. So I could actually go to my character, swap some gear, add something with close, add something with core, and see how it changes things. It's going to get kind of messy because all my items have berserking, so taking one off is going to adjust the Blood Rage bonus. And before I do that, I just want to kind of give the conclusion before I kind of get too lost in that. So the conclusion is, here's how the stat sheet calculates stuff. You'd think that adding a ton of crit, let's see if I just add 100% additive crit. If I do this 52.5, I change it to 152.5. We'll see the stat sheet value go up by 100. Nope, it went up a lot more than that, right? Because it looks like heavy-handed and the base crit modifier are inflating my additive crit damage. If I have grandfather, it's even more, right? If I just take this back down to 52.5, looks like I've lost like 300 additive crit, but that's not what happened. I only lost 100. And what really happens in combat is all of the additive damage from all the different tags that apply when you're dealing damage will get added up. All of the multiplicative bonuses get multiplied together, and then you multiply the product of the multipliers and the sum of the additive damage, and you get this 50. Let's say in this case it's 51.9. So I'm just going to write this down here, 51.9. Okay. Let's say I go back and want to add 100 crit damage. Okay. Now my total additive times multiplicatives 81.75. 81.755. Okay. How much of an increase? Okay, it's not a percent. Stupid Excel, whatever. How much did that increase? It's 57% higher. All right, what if I, instead of getting 100 crit, I get 100 close? Anybody want to guess what's going to happen? Oops, sorry about that. So I took the crit back down. I added to close instead, and we've still got 81.755. It actually doesn't make a difference, right? Because your total additive bucket is multiplied by all your multipliers. And all of these things are damage multipliers. They don't inflate one type of additive damage or the other. The stat sheet just makes it look like that because of how janky it's coded. Yeah, so going back, the close affix is the 5th prio because it's larger than the crit affix. Even though the grandfather, heavy-handed, and other things make it look like crit gets inflated and is more valuable, that's not actually what happens. Yeah, so that's the conclusion. Maybe next time I'll figure out how attack power is calculated and talk some more about that. But I think that's enough for now. If anybody wants to throw their numbers into this or contact me, you can DM me on Discord, leave a comment in the YouTube video or whatever. We can talk some more about this. Give me your data. And I would love if somebody had grandfather and actually wanted to test this. The test would look like make a character with a ton of additive crit and a character with no additive crit. Measure your damage when you crit in both cases. Then equip grandfather. Do it again. The theory that I believe will be proven is that grandfather has a 100% multiplicative damage bonus. It does not scale up your additive crit damage. So what we'll see in that test is that it doesn't matter how much additive crit you have, equipping grandfather doubles your crit damage in both cases. If I'm wrong, then the character with a ton of additive crit will receive more benefit from grandfather than the character with no additive crit. I think that'll be the simplest way to prove that. It's identical to the proof that we used previously for Unbridled Rage, being a total damage multiplier rather than a additive core damage multiplier. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. I think I've talked enough. Everybody's probably already turned the video off because this is math, and we're gamers. Who wants to do math? Yeah, obviously I do. I spend more time in Excel than I do grinding for gear, obviously. So, yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something.